Welcome to the Jeremy and Andy Talk Movies podcast. We're back.
We're back.
After what feels like a really long hiatus, but really all it was we missed 1 week.
1 week.
Andy. I am Jeremy, by the way.
You are. I'm Andy.
And it's my fault that we missed a week. Sickness that's been going around a lot hit me, and I was just unable to do anything last
Very
weekend.
bitter towards you. No, I'm just kidding.
And
I'm glad you're better.
Yeah, we're in the thick of basketball seasons as well. You having a son playing and a daughter cheering and a wife coaching cheerleading. And so you've been very busy with that. I'm coaching as well. Been right in the thick of it. And so between sickness and business with basketball, it was hard for me to even
see a movie,
get around to seeing a movie. And so we did it though. I was able to get to a movie this weekend.
I've seen all the movies.
God, I'm envious of you.
I know you are.
I feel like I've mostly recovered from my sickness.
Good.
Like
you got hit hard, didn't you?
The bad symptoms are all gone, but I still have that lingering, I can't get my energy back.
Yeah.
The appetite hasn't been fully back. And so yesterday I finally had a day off, and I thought, well, man, it feels like forever since I've seen a movie. Maybe I'll just make this a movie day. I'll go up and hang out at the theater and watch a bunch of movies, catch up. I watched one, and I said, I need to get home. I'm really tired. Which is sad to say. I'm too tired to sit in a theater for another movie.
You're sick.
But it was like that. So the one movie I did see, the movie that we're going to talk about today, was Captain America: Brave New World. And this is a movie that I can't say it has a lot of anticipation because I didn't feel that, and yet it felt like a kind of a lot riding on it because Marvel has been seemingly so quiet for so long. It had Deadpool and Wolverine last year, but that doesn't seem like a real MCU movie.
It feels so disconnected from the MCU.
That this one feels like the first real MCU thing in a while.
Yeah.
And so I think there was that level. I mean, Marvel used to be like every Marvel movie was a big deal.
Yeah, unfortunately they have lost that.
And people just I think people have wanted it to return. There's been like a longing for, hey, remember when Marvel was appointment seeing?
Oh, yeah.
And people were hoping that this was going to be something that was going to reignite that.
Yeah.
There's three Marvel movies coming out this year. This is the first of them. So then we have Thunderbolts.
It's an important year for Marvel.
And then Fantastic Four will be coming later. If I'm really honest, this was the least excited I was about the three.
Yeah.
Probably kind of goes in order that they're coming out build-up wise. Like Thunderbolts probably the second, and then Fantastic Four is probably the one I'm most at least interested in. That said, even the Thunderbolts, there's something about that, even though it's a lot of characters I don't care much about, somehow they made the previews look more fun to me, where a preview came on before Captain America Brave New World, and I really had that thought of I kind of wish I was watching that one instead of this one.
It looks fun. It looks fun.
That said, we've talked about it before. I'm not the biggest fan of Captain America as one of the MCU heroes.
Right.
Like Winter Soldier is one of your favorite MCU movies. Not one of mine.
Right.
This is, of course, a different Captain America anyways, but I still feel like sort of trying to carry the same style of movie. He's a similar type of hero.
Yes.
Sam Wilson as Steve Rogers is not so different from Steve Rogers. In fact, that's why he was chosen by Steve Rogers to be the new Captain America, as he has the same type of personality and quality.
Yeah.
And, I talked about it before, I think works great in a team setting. He makes the great leader, but it's also a little boring. It's a little bit of the Superman problem. He's not allowed to be complex.
Yeah, I'm just the good guy, and
Yeah. But anyways, I started to write down a synopsis, and I realized I was just going to get way too in depth.
You were really working hard on that. You were
going.
You were in the zone.
And I'll be honest, it was starting to get really snarky.
You're like, this is too much even for me, and I'm writing this.
I'll read what I had.
Okay.
How about that?
Okay, I can't wait.
I mean, barely even getting into the plot. And like I said, I got snarky, so I'm just giving you that warning.
Fair enough.
Front. All right, so my synopsis. In an MCU that moved on from the Eternals, they recalled that a giant celestial formation exists on Earth, and luckily, they found use for it. It shall be the source of adamantium, the metal stronger than even vibranium that will eventually be most famous for Wolverine's claws. As the world deliberates who gets it, the newly elected President Thunderbolt Ross, who you'll remember as the foil to Hulk, played by William Hurt, Harrison Ford. But one thing that won't change, his signature mustache. scrap that. Ford isn't doing a mustache.
He's not.
Meanwhile, Tim Blake Nelson, probably discovered while Deadpool went through the recycling bin, is going to pull a Baron Zemo from Captain America Civil War by mind-controlling people and manipulating circumstances until the heroes undo themselves. Along for the ride is Sam Wilson, a.k.a. Captain America. And that's as far as I got.
You were getting snarky, weren't you?
I was. Yeah, this is a Captain America movie. It's Sam Wilson's finally getting his Captain America movie. It's really a Thunderbolt Ross movie.
Yeah, in a lot of ways.
Yeah. I mean,
I even saw people online that were really being snarky that were like, this is the Incredible Hulk 2.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, okay. But
that's a little disingenuous. It does definitely follow Captain America. It's just most of the plot is centered around Ross. And it really is kind of Captain America's just thrown
kind of
into
there.
it. But I guess when you really think about it, that does happen in a lot of superhero movies.
It's not uncommon. It's not. I feel like a lot of people are picking on this movie for this, but it's really not that uncommon.
Yeah. So where the snark was going to continue, and you know what? I'm going to pause here and say this. I don't think this was a bad movie.
Okay.
Because all my snark is going to indicate to people that
I
I probably thought that this movie was just a dud or it sucked. Ultimately, this movie was just the epitome of, meh.
Yeah.
There's an MCU movie. Mm-hmm. And that's where I landed on it. And so before I say any more, Andy, I got to know, where did you land on this movie?
I enjoyed it. I think I've just come to accept the fact that the luster is kind of gone. And I don't mean that as negatively as it sounds. We're just never going to go back to that prime MCU, I don't think. That being said, I think this was an important movie for the MCU, and I think this is the movie the MCU needed right now. And I can explain that more as we go on if you want, or I can dive in right now.
I'm going to do a little more snark, and then we'll let you dive into the positive.
Please be snarky.
This movie felt like so many things just kind of recycled. I already said it. From the villain plot, feeling very much a recycling of the
Zemo.
Civil War thing, where it's, there's just somebody really smart behind the scenes who's trying to ruin the reputation of the hero. That's really like his thing that he's doing. But then we've got, for better or worse, I mean, let's just say it, Sam Wilson as Captain America is kind of discount Captain America.
Yeah,
and
I wanted to have that conversation.
It's not his fault, but he is. And then it's like, hey, even though he's still basically the Falcon and Captain America, we still want him to have a Falcon sidekick.
Yeah.
You may remember him, fans, from the show Falcon and Winter Soldier. Luckily, I did see the show, and yet I still did not remember that he was a character from that show at all. I literally thought they were just introducing this guy cold, and I was like, wow, they're really just like throwing this guy in here. And then I read he was in the show, and I was like, holy crap, I thought I remembered the show. Apparently, I don't.
Yeah.
If you were a big fan of Black Widow, don't worry. We've got a discount Black Widow in this movie. And if you're like, oh, I really like more of the what's the sister's name that's in the
Yelena.
Yeah, if you really like her because she has more of a funny accent, don't worry. This one has a funny accent too. But don't worry, she's gonna be like a mini version of it. So it's something
literally
new.
like. Yeah, we can get into that later.
Yeah.
Remind me to come back to that.
Do you like the Hulk? Because we've got a discount Hulk. We've got Red Hulk. And it's just everything in this movie is just like, I feel like you're giving me reheated MCU. I feel like you went in the fridge and you're like, hey, let's just get out some old ingredients and kind of reheat
Well, because we're
stuff.
like, what, 25 movies and 12 TV shows in now?
I think I read that this was the 35th
Is it that many? See,
that might include the shows. I don't know. But it said 35th like Marvel thing. It's a lot.
It's a lot.
And that's probably why it feels like you said, eventually you just kind of get to the B plot points and the B characters.
Yeah.
I just wish maybe the B characters were at least new and unique and not like it. What it really feels like is it feels like, at some point it was like, we've got all the candy bars that we're ever going to have. Now we're just going to do a new twist on the candy bars. Oh, you've had Snickers, but have you had like white chocolate Snickers? Like that. And you start just go like, you're just trying too hard. Or M&Ms, or put out like a peanut butter and jelly M&M. And you're like, nobody's asking for this. You don't have to make something new. You've got, and that's sort of what MCU feels like it's in now. Yeah. It's like, we don't have anything new, but maybe we can give you a twist on it.
And I do wish the MCU would stop doing the thing of like, okay, we no longer have Tony Stark's Iron Man, but we have Iron Heart. Like, everybody you lose, you don't have to find a replacement for him.
Right.
You've got enough good characters. Like, you don't have to have like the new Iron Man, the new Hulk. Like, I wish they would stop that.
Absolutely. It also, like, the more that they expand the roster of MCU characters, the more it's hard. I mean, like, I know this is the thing you have to do as a movie viewer, to go like, just ignore the fact that all the other Avengers characters exist in this world and they're not going to show up in this story. Bucky's going to show up for a second.
And then he's like, oh man, I got to go. I got this thing.
I know.
And it's like, I mean, your thing could probably wait if the world, the world is about to go to war.
He's running for Congress or something. It's just,
and he's like, I got to go, man. Like,
meetings or fundraiser or whatever it is.
Whatever it was, you're like, they'll probably understand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's a little silly. You're also like, this Red Hulk shows up. I was kind of surprised we didn't get a cameo from Ruffalo or something, Just
I was really surprised. I thought maybe like Green Hulk would show up and stop Red Hulk.
Yeah. Or even...
And I would say spoiler alert, but the movie did not hide that at all, that Red Hulk is in this movie.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
I really thought maybe even in credits, you'd get, Banner showing up to confront Ross and be like, hey, like that's would have been an interesting
hey, that's my thing.
Yeah. Well, look how the turntables have
turned.
Yeah.
I thought it'd be so funny if Banner showed up and was like, so when you turn into Hulk, your pants stay on too. Yeah. Like, that's crazy.
Right? Oh, that is funny. So let's maybe let you dive into some more of the positive.
Yeah. So I think what I liked about this movie is it actually felt, even though there are a lot of recycled things, to me it felt like a movie instead of just a commercial or a tease for the things that are coming. Mm-hmm. I did feel like they kept it within this story instead of just constantly being like, wink, X-Men, wink, something that's coming in 5 years. Like, I enjoyed that. And I think they needed a movie that it didn't do any multiverse crap, because that's been a disaster. I like that this movie just stayed, it was just, for as much as you're going to get from a Marvel. I mean, they're in the Indian Ocean and they're here and they're there, but it wasn't about galaxies and multiverses and these people coming from this planet. Like, it felt more contained, which I think was really important for the MCU right now, because this multiverse stuff has just been a disaster. And, like we talked about it, like, I had a really good time with Deadpool and Wolverine. I've honestly had no desire to go back and watch that movie, because it just felt like so many, like, hey, look at what we just did. And this at least felt like, okay, we're making a movie, not just a bunch of, we're the MCU and we can do anything, and look, there's Elektra, and look, there's, like, that has just run its course with me. That kind of gimmick, or that, like, oh my gosh, they got such and such to be in this movie. So I was ready to just, like, if you're going to give me Captain America and it's Sam Wilson's Captain America, then let me have it. Let me see Sam Wilson as Captain America fighting and throwing his shield. And so I did appreciate that. And, I thought there was some good acting in this movie. Like, his name's Anthony Mackie. Like, he's all in. Mm-hmm. Like, he's all in. And
I think he's a good actor just in general.
I think he's doing a good job. And they brought back the other guy from Captain America, or from Falcon and Winter Soldier, like the older guy who was an old school, like, he was basically a Captain America, but because he was
gravity,
because he was black, he felt like, so they had him, and I thought that guy does a good job. Like, he's got this sadness about him of, like, man, the world forgot about me. And that gave the movie a little bit of weight, I felt like. And but without getting too, like, heavy-handed into, like, I'm not going to a Captain America movie to solve racial issues. But I mean, like, at least that brought some weight to the movie, I think. And, I don't really know what to think about Harrison Ford in this movie, but, like, his presence, I do think, counts for something. Mm-hmm. Where you're like, this is Harrison Ford. Like, that's kind of cool.
It did feel like they definitely retailored the character to be more of a Harrison
Ford
Ford type.
for sure.
They were like, hey, Harrison, just you do your thing,
Just
man.
be Harrison Ford. And I like, like we've talked about, I'm a Winter Soldier guy. I like that, like, I don't know who I can trust. I like that. And even though it is recycled, I did enjoy it. And I kind of, I was a sucker for Tim Blake Nelson in this movie. I really was. It felt comic booky, but without being stupid. I don't know. I thought they handled that well. So, and the whole thing may just be that I've just lowered my expectations for the MCU. So I was just going like, man, I just don't want this movie to suck. And it didn't. I had a good time. And 2 hours. This movie just breezed right along to me. So those are all things I appreciated.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I will always stand, though, for they should have just walked away. I mean, they were the king of the mountain.
Yeah.
They had done what no one else had done or will ever be able to do again. And had they just walked away after Avengers Endgame, we would look back on that run with such reverence. So I always have just this little bit of sadness now with the MCU instead of joy, which is what I used to have. I always have the sadness of like, man, you guys, like, you did it. You did this thing. Like, you set out to make this 10-year plan and you did it. And you did it as best as you possibly could. And now everything's just starting to feel a little like, I've seen this but
we're in the Michael Jordan plays for the Wizards era of the MCU.
We are. So it's like saying, oh, cool. Michael Jordan had a pretty good game for the Wizards 5 years after he should. You know what I mean? So
yeah.
I don't want to sound overly negative. Like, I don't want to just heap praise on this movie. Like, it's not the best movie of the year or whatever, but I enjoyed it. And I don't want to give the impression that I didn't.
Yeah. And I just want to re-echo what I said earlier. I didn't think this was a bad movie. Mm-hmm. I thought that this was a middle of the pack MCU movie.
Yeah.
Is kind of where I landed with that, which is how I felt about almost everything after Endgame.
Yeah.
There really haven't been a lot of entries that I've just been like, oh, this is just bad.
No, not a lot.
I never saw the Marvels, but
and even that, I think now all of a sudden it in some ways it's kind of almost like you're just supposed to crap all over the MCU now. I mean, I see stuff online, and like he was even listening to a podcast when people are like, oh, this is just garbage, and I'm like, I mean, it's not. I think you're being a little harsh. I don't think this is awful. I've already seen things where it's like, well, at least I know what the worst movie of the year is going to be, and you're like, come on, people, like,
yeah, it's not bad.
You might want to cool it just a little bit. I mean, I understand like this is incredible. The MCU is back. I'm not saying that at all, but there's way worse movies than this, people.
For sure. And I think if nothing else, you can look at Marvel and say, like, Marvel not being itself, let's say. Marvel being, as we said, Michael Jordan with the Wizards. It's still not the Sony Spider-Verse.
Oh my gosh.
It's still not even the DCU.
Right. I mean, this is light years better than Madam Web, Craven, Justice League. I mean, ultimately the number one enemy of Marvel is just Marvel.
Yeah.
They set the bar so high through no faults of their own, and then they just oversaturated their own market. That's what I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I did think it was interesting, and maybe it's supposed to be really telling right from the beginning of the movie that they're kind of entering a new stage. Is we didn't get the typical Marvel logo intro that's kind of become the staple of Marvel.
Yep. You know what? And I honestly kind of like that.
Yeah.
It's like maybe that's just kind of a symbolic, like, okay, like we know, like we're trying to change some things and move forward with some things. So yeah, that didn't bother me.
Yeah, I'm with you. They didn't do it, and it was who really even pays attention to logo stuff much. But when it's something so like tied into something, when they didn't do it, I was like, oh, this is interesting. I hope that this means kind of a turning of the page.
Yeah.
Like, we don't have to say remember all the stuff that were attached to this. Like you said, it kind of can be its own contained thing.
And I kind of want to reserve my judgments on the MCU going forward too after we see Thunderbolts and Fantastic Four.
Yeah.
Because you do have these 3 movies coming out within a somewhat compressed amount of time. I mean, February to July. And, and we have a big Avengers movie coming next summer. And obviously these movies are going to build towards that. So, it's hard. That's the thing with the MCU. Like, do you look at the big picture? Do you look at the individual movie? Or do you try to do a balance of both?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think we'll probably give a quick spoiler warning, and then we'll get into some more specific details
Sure.
Of the movie. But we're going to take a quick intermission before that.
Okay.
All right, and we're back. Not that
back.
it's been much of a break for those watching or listening.
Right.
But we were going to get into the spoiler territories, talk
Yeah.
about more specifics about the plot and what happens in this movie. Not that
There's
as you
not even
said,
that much to spoil, really.
not a lot to spoil because, as you said, the previews sold the movie on the idea
big
of
thing.
you're getting
Yeah.
Red Hulk, which was, if you didn't see previews, would be, I would say, the big reveal in the movie.
Definitely.
But
And then we already said it. Bucky pops up very briefly. But yeah, there's not a ton to spoil.
no.
Yeah.
Maybe, I mean, I guess the big twist that I don't think was in the previews was just the idea that adamantium's the driving thing behind this global conflict in the movie, that they've decided this celestial being, as we said, the thing that came from the movie The Eternals that
And
started
has
to rise
not been
up.
talked about since.
Yes.
And it's this literal, like, ginormous thing in the ocean.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think they literally call it the Celestial Islands, right? Or
So that I actually enjoyed that kind of stuff because it brought something. Again, when I say this is the movie the MCU needed, it felt like it kind of tied up some things that have just been out there in the universe. Where it's like, are we going to talk about this colossal thing? I know another spoiler, which we're into spoilers now. It brings back the Liv Tyler character.
yeah,
Because it's another thing where it's like, hey, remember how Banner had this girl and it was Ross's daughter? So I did appreciate that. Just as an MCU fan and as someone who's watched everything, like, okay, thank you for finally addressing some of this stuff and at least making an effort to tie up some of these loose ends.
yeah,
So that stuff didn't bother me at all. And the adamantium, is that what it's called?
adamantium. Yeah.
Adamantium. Like, I appreciate that. Those are the kind of teases I like.
Yeah.
Where it's like it rewards you, like, okay, as a fan of this stuff, I know that is what Wolverine's claws are made of. But it wasn't just a, like, wink, look how clever we are. They just addressed it head on, and it's a part of the movie instead of just a tease for something. Like, we might not get an X-Men movie for like 5 years.
Right.
So I just appreciated that it wasn't just like I said earlier, like, oh man, we are so clever and we just talked about this thing.
No, I liked the idea that adamantium comes from that celestial thing.
Yeah.
Because, as you said, like, what I wouldn't want is for the X-Men to come along this universe now in this world where they've only built up vibranium as like the metal to be like, oh, but now there's a new thing we haven't talked about that's kind of unexplained.
They explained it.
But the fact this celestial, it's like, oh yeah, this like a celestial, this supernatural creature that was going to rise and like consume the planet is made of a new material that is stronger. Like that kind of all
within
makes
the
sense.
world, it makes sense.
And it feels like a great way to salvage that.
It
because
does.
I don't think that this is one of those great long planning things they did where when the celestial thing happened in Eternals, they were like, and this is how we'll introduce adamantium
but they
later.
kind of made it look that way.
Yeah, they did a nice little like reclamation of it.
And I think one thing that the MCU has always, for the most part, always done a really good job of is they take these crazy things, whether it's, Iron Man or the Hulk or whatever, and it's like once, like, we've done this crazy thing, but here's how we think the world would react to this thing, even if it's ridiculous. So, like, I like the idea that all the different nations, like, no, we want this.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, that makes sense. That's logic within this, fantasy that's going on. And I appreciate that kind of stuff.
Right. There's sort of a tertiary character in this movie we haven't talked about because it doesn't stand out very much in the movie, but this villainous Sidewinder, I think is what it's called.
The Serpent Society thing, which is a thing from the comics.
And I learned from reading the trivia that the character was entirely brought in during reshoots, which is amazing to me because it just kind of shows how heavily the reshoots can change a movie because he's pretty significant in the movie.
He's a big part of the
throughout
movie.
it. And I'm going, man, how did the movie flow before he was in it? Because he's such a big part. And they brought in, I'm never going to know how to say the guy's name.
Something Esposito.
Yes.
I don't remember the first part.
One word, but it sounds like two. It's like Giancarlo because it's Gian.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to mess
And
it
he's
up.
good.
He's a great actor.
And
and it's almost one of those like overqualified for the part things because the MCU can do this.
But that's another thing to me that did feel like old school MCU, where it's like we're just getting good actors for these parts. And it's like, you're right, he's overqualified. Really, it's a nothing part, but he does a good job, and he just has a look, and he's older, so it's kind of a nice change of pace. And he's not this like jacked, like 20-year-old guy. Like, he's older, and he speaks with authority. And when he says something, you're like, this guy means business. So I appreciate that's the kind of stuff where it's like, this is a good movie. Like, this guy's doing a good job in this part.
Yeah. There was the one scene with him that felt, and I know I've been very insulting saying recycled, felt like Captain America, Winter Soldier. I don't even mean this one in a bad way. It's the scene where Sam Wilson's driving his car and he turns a corner and there's Sidewinder with a machine gun and just starts shooting. Yeah. And it was kind of a cool, like, little shootout scene.
Yeah, I like that
but
scene.
I definitely had like thoughts of like, oh, this is Captain
right.
America,
I'm not
Winter
arguing
Soldier
with
is.
that.
And I know I've been saying that as an insult all along. I don't necessarily mean this one as an insult. Sometimes it just is reminiscent of something in an okay way.
Yeah. No. Yeah, I thought he was good, and I thought he was a good addition to the movie.
Yeah. I thought that the sidekick guy, the guy who's playing kind of the new Falcon, was pretty good, but he teetered a bit for me.
Yeah.
It was like they needed him because they need personality in the movie.
Yeah.
Sam Wilson's playing the Steve Rogers-esque, like I'm
straight-laced.
I'm business, like I'm about doing things right, and they needed his sort of silliness and fun.
They do.
He was a little goofy at times. I kept thinking they needed to cast, although it would have been asking him to kind of repeat the same thing, they needed to cast the guy who is from Nope and Twisters in that part.
He'd be so good.
This feels like a part
that guy's
perfect for
name?
him. I know. I should remember.
I know. I should too. Yeah.
He's such a likable guy.
He's so likable.
But like the whole time I was watching, it sounds like I'm insulting the other guy. He's not bad. I don't mean to insult the other guy.
And it's kind of like a necessary evil, because if you're going to have hey, I'm all business and I'm a patriot and I always do the right thing, they do need somebody to play off of.
Yeah.
They do.
The fault, I'm saying, I want to be clear, it's probably not the actor's fault, it's probably the writer's fault, because the writers sometimes they just go a little too cheesy.
They do.
And it is, they're family friendly movies, so the guys, like, sometimes the jokes are like really good clever jokes, and sometimes they're like, this is the easy obvious like Nickelodeon style joke punched in here. So
I will say a positive. I thought they handled it really well, like how much they had that character in the movie. Like he was in it, he was very present, but it wasn't like he's like, oh my gosh, this guy. Like, they handled that well.
Yeah, until he had his War Machine from Civil War moment where he crashed.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I am going to stop making fun of
you're
everything
right.
being recycled from previous movies.
Honestly, you're right. And now that you're saying this, I didn't even really think of it that way. But yeah, it's a lot of recycled stuff.
Yeah.
It is. And I'm not even going to try and argue that.
Yeah. I just want to throw this out there. Brandon Perea is the guy from Nope and from Twisters.
And just a side note, that guy's awesome.
He's so awesome.
Yeah, he's awesome.
And I should remember his name because he's awesome.
Let's talk about Harrison Ford.
Let's talk about him.
How did you think he did in this movie?
It is really hard to separate not even what I know of Harrison Ford, but what sort of my perception of Harrison Ford is. Because I'll say this, like the things he's done in recent years, and even though what I've seen in interviews, really show me that I don't really know Harrison Ford, but he's kind of got a reputation as a very grumpy guy, a very particular guy, and the type of guy who I think would typically align more with Scorsese and say things like, Marvel's not cinema.
It's ruining cinema.
Yeah. And so seeing him in a Marvel movie is
I'm sure
weird,
whatever paycheck they wrote him would. Yeah.
I did see a great interview where the guy asked him, like, how hard is it to turn off the part of your brain
I saw
that's
it.
like, that makes you act like, and he goes, I'm going to tell you a secret. That's what the money's for. And I'm like, yeah, that's a guy who gets it. Like, hey, they're paying me a lot to do this fun little thing of acting. And I do think he embraced it well.
I thought he yeah.
I think the only thing that was really my criticism, and I don't know if this is a Harrison Ford thing, it might again be the writers, is the fact that it did feel like they didn't say, hey, this is our character, and so go do it. They just were like, be that kind of Harrison Ford character you are now. You're going to be a little grumpy, which fits in with the Red Hulk, I'm building my anger
thing. It does,
yeah. But we're also just, even the jokes he makes, the scene of him riding on the exercise bike and be like,
That was weird.
Tell my person that was 5 miles.
That was weird.
And it's like, that just feels like Harrison Ford stuff.
Yeah.
Not like if William Hurt was, rest in peace, if he was still alive playing the part,
I
that
don't
joke
see him
wasn't
doing
in
that.
there. Right.
I don't see him doing that. Yeah.
So it just felt like a real shift.
I will say this, like, if those are the cards they're dealt and William Hurt passed away and they had to recast, I think it was a good choice.
Yeah.
Because it's like, there's just something about the Harrison, like you said, whether it's right or wrong, what we think or what we know about Harrison Ford, and, just his presence in the movie, I do think elevates the movie.
Yeah.
I really do. And I guess it's like, man, kudos to you, Harrison Ford, at this stage in the game for like, sure, I'll be Red Hulk.
Yeah.
I didn't mind it. And I thought I think a lot of times with the MCU stuff, there's kind of some secretly like good writing. And I liked all the stuff with him and Sam Wilson of like we don't like each other, but like, let's try to like each other. And I think there's a little more to that stuff sometimes than we give it credit for.
Yeah.
And even like Ford delivering that, "You're not Steve Rogers." Like the way he can deliver that, it's like, you know what? That's good line reading right there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I did think the jokes about the mustache were funny because it was an obvious thing.
And then it showed an old picture of Ford and he had a mustache.
Yeah.
It was like, I thought that stuff worked.
And it made me think, like, do I wish Ford would have just done the mustache thing?
Dude, that would have been awesome.
I don't know if I'm saying it like it was his choice necessarily. Maybe it wasn't even something they wanted him to do.
Probably.
But I was like, you see the picture and you're like, that's funny. But if it was in the whole movie, would I just be distracted? Would I the whole time be like, look at Ford with the mustache? It is just funny to me because I don't know. There's like, I go way too into the weeds of Harrison Ford and roles that could have been played with people with mustaches because as movie people know, Indiana Jones was originally going to be played by
Tom Selleck.
Another legendary mustache man.
I know,
and,
right?
It's like, would Indiana Jones have had a mustache? I assume so.
It's an incredible what if, isn't it?
And then Harrison Ford gets cast instead, no mustache, obviously. And then even Thunderbolt Ross, mustache. See, you got Sam Elliott, iconic mustache guy. You got William Hurt says, I'm going to stick with the mustache. And then Harrison Ford, no mustache. And it's just kind of like, has Harrison Ford ever rocked a mustache in a movie?
See, he had a beard in The Fugitive.
He had a beard, yep.
I don't know if he has.
And then cut it to his, standard Harrison
As
Ford.
usual, the answer is to give him the Count Orlok mustache.
Exactly.
Just go full mustachioed vampire.
Exactly.
Yeah, as usual, that's the answer.
Yeah.
No, I think he's a welcome addition to this movie. And I will say this, like, it shouldn't be a surprise at this stage of the game, and MCU has every resource available to him. But I saw this on the IMAX, and just the Red Hulk looked great up on the big screen. And again, it's not any kind of hot take. It's not a surprise, but looks great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know it's probably exactly what I would do in the same situation, but you also like roll your eyes at every person who encounters a Hulk or somebody like it and still tries to shoot it with a handgun.
I know.
And you're like, really?
It doesn't work.
You don't think you're just about to take it off and make it come right at you?
Yeah.
But yeah, I know I'd probably do the same thing.
I will also say this too, like, you're not looking for nuance in these movies, but I did appreciate the fact that they built, it's kind of like a slow burn to the Red Hulk. Mm-hmm. He doesn't show up till there's like 15 or 20 minutes left in the movie, and it's built towards, he's taking those pills the whole movie, and you don't have to be a genius to figure out that. You can figure out the plot pretty quickly. Like, obviously, this guy's giving him these pills so he'll become Red Hulk. But at least it took its time and built to it. And you almost get it when they're on the ship, but you don't. So it's like, you know what? I kind of appreciated that. Instead of just like, here's Red Hulk. We know you want Red Hulk. Like, they actually handled that really well, I think, and showed a little restraint.
Yeah. I do think, I can say this now, that we're fully into spoilers, although all we've really talked about is mustaches and casting. But the climax was a little, I think, underwhelming.
I liked it.
I didn't dislike it. It's kind of what you knew had to happen, but it's like they fought it out until we got the big boom and then it's like, okay, now it's slowed down enough I can have my like conversation and remember what you're thinking about and calms them down.
I know.
It just happened so like easily, and it's like, okay, like
I know. I think to me it was just like, man, because of like, especially the first Avengers, we've seen a Hulk character, the Ruffalo character, jump on buildings and we've seen all that. So this was at least like kind of like it had the setting of the tree, the cherry blossom trees or whatever. Yeah. So visually I thought that looked cool and different. So it didn't bother me. I kind of enjoyed it. Yeah, I liked it. You know what? Ryan, my son Ryan, he brought up the best point. He was like, man, they missed an opportunity for such a good joke. And I was like, all right, do tell. And he was like, they should have had a scene where, Sam Wilson and the Hulk are fighting. And the Hulk's like getting ready to punch him or something. And Sam Wilson's like, man, I got to try it. And he should have been like, sun's getting real low, big guy. And I was like, that would have. And then the Hulk just is like, and then just punches him anyway.
When he was having the talk, I was thinking it'd
that
be really
would have
funny
been
if he,
really
if he dropped
funny.
That line.
That would have been really funny.
Yeah.
So like, I'm not here to argue with you. Like, I'm not saying like, no, you're wrong. That scene was incredible. I think I just thought, you know what? It's a change. It's something different. The cherry trees at least give me something visually different to look at than just like, Hulk is rampaging through the city again. Mm. And I thought it was kind of like, it's ridiculous in a movie like this to say less is more, but they kept it all pretty contained. It's like we've seen so much from the MCU and we've seen, Thanos wipe out the galaxy. So if you're going to get Sam Wilson's Captain America and Red Hulk fighting, I'd rather it just be a small contained scene, personally. Yeah. So I thought it was handled well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You could tell they were having a hard time towing the line a little bit with Red Hulk being too destructive because they're like, we need him to still in the movie as being kind of a good guy. We don't want him to have too much collateral damage. So like,
yeah, they kept
clearly
it very...
people died, but in ways that you never see people die, like helicopter crashes.
Yeah,
where you don't see the,
Yep.
That's kind of their like little workaround. Like we can't have nobody die because he's going all Red Hulk and fighting people.
Yeah,
but we're not going to show you him crushing people.
I think too, like I just always appreciate it when they do find a way to show something different. Like at one point, Red Hulk has this giant American flag, and he like uses it as a spear. And I was like, you know what? I've never seen that before. So 30 movies in or whatever, if they can do something that it just kind of makes me go, you know what? That was kind of cool. I guess maybe ultimately what I'm saying is just I'm just getting easier to please when it comes to these MCU movies. Yeah. I no longer have that. Avengers in-game expectation. I'm like, you know what? I just want to feel like I got my $12 worth, and I did.
All right.
So, we've got to talk about this.
Oh,
this new Black Widow thing. Why did they cast the world's smallest actress?
I looked
that
at she's
visually
5'2".
looks terrible.
Yeah, it was.
And I'm not trying to
strange.
I'm not trying to pick, but that was such a strange choice.
Yeah,
like she is tiny.
Yeah.
I really don't have a whole lot else to say, but it's just like, man, what was that? What is this? This is a strange choice.
It was a strange choice. It also just felt really unnecessary. It didn't feel like it added anything to the movie.
That she's a widow? That she's from the Red Room?
A couple of action sequences where she got to be, BA.
Yeah.
And how would you explain that except for maybe that, she's, widow trained. But other than that, like, why?
I don't even really care about that, but I can't get over the visual of how small that actress is. She's so tiny.
She is tiny. It is distracting. You're right.
Yes, it's distracting how small
she is. I don't want there to be an endless well of like we can just keep having new widows pop up.
Agreed.
You know what I mean?
Because it just feels like it's always just this trick we have we can pull out when we need to.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't part of. Like in Black Widow, didn't they wipe out a bunch of the widows or something?
I thought so.
It's getting
pretty much. Yeah, I thought they were kind
messy.
of like it gets messy. I mean, I kind of feel the same way about Hulks too. Now there's Hulk, there's a She-Hulk, there's a Red Hulk.
Hulk's got a son. That happened in She-Hulk.
Did it? Oh yes. Gosh, I didn't even know that.
Yes, that's
I didn't watch the show. I just don't want there to be so many. Every time you do that, you just water down what the original was.
You do.
I'm still annoyed that was it in one of the shows or one of the movies, I don't even remember, where a girl makes her own Iron Man costume. And it's like
Black Panther 2. Now they're going to make a Disney Plus show about
it's
her.
Like
Ironheart.
Don't do that.
Don't do that.
We had Iron Man.
And that's what I'm saying. We don't need you had Iron Man, but now here's Ironheart.
Yeah.
Yeah. You don't need that.
I don't like all that.
Yeah. Did you like Tim Blake Nelson as the kind of the villain?
I thought he was fine.
I liked him. I thought that stuff worked. I liked this whole I calculate an 89%. I thought that was just kind of something different, and I liked it. And he looked, like I said, I liked the way they made him look. Like he looked comic booky, But he was, you weren't like, oh my gosh, that is so stupid. Like, and I thought it was cool at the beginning of the movie when he'd be talking and they'd keep him in the shadows, but you could kind of see like the green in his eyes. I was like, oh, this is kind of cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I liked him. I thought he did a good job.
Yeah.
I don't know. Again, there's not like a ton to dissect, but to me, it was just like, you know what? If this is the role that needs filled, Tim Blake Nelson did a good job.
Yeah. I just going back to the villain in Civil War, Baron.
It's hard for you to get
Zemo.
past that.
It's like the fact that guy was like, he's the normal guy who just lost his family in Sokovia. So it's how can a normal guy fight these things? Well, he can only do it through, trying to outsmart him and use his brain because he can't physically take him on. And like, okay, there's something to that versus, oh, this guy is supernaturally smart because he got Hulk juice in the brain.
I do.
And so you're gonna it's hard not to judge him by a different standard of so his plan needs to be the smartest plan ever, which is a hard thing for writers.
It is.
I get that. If I were the writer of the movie, I'd be like, I don't know what the smartest person ever is gonna do as a plot to, and so it just makes it trickier.
It does. I did, and have we seen this from the MCU? Like, I did like the idea of like I thought it was effective, like he brings, and I can't remember the guy's name, like he calls him OG, like the OG Winter Soldier guy, the African American guy, and like that he's got control over these guys, and they just they turn like that. And then I did like the scene where the new Falcon guy was like, I don't know, let's just figure this out, and he blasts that song. And he's like, nope, nobody hears under it.
Yeah, that was a good joke.
He's like, okay, smart move, like. But then you also get it, like, and this is just being nitpicky. It's like, man, thank goodness, like the new Falcon can just hack into every computer and figure everything out.
Yes, there's a lot of that.
There's a lot of that where he's like,
movie
okay,
where
like I checked, and what he's done is he's controlling their minds with this song, and it's like, boy, you found that out really easily and really quickly.
Yes.
And then the old movie cliche of like when Falcon and Wilson break into the lair, and he's just got the conveniently labeled file like Thunderbolt Ross. It's like, hey, bad guys, stop leaving files out with their names on them because that always blows up in your face.
Yeah.
That's just a very easy way to advance a plot of a movie, and it's not like Marvel's not the only one guilty of that. Like all movies do that.
Right. I mean, they walk into his place, and not only that, but his computers are all on, and there's no like password screen or everything.
Like,
it's just,
oh, here's what he's doing.
Click, click. Oh,
Yeah.
interesting.
I know, and I shouldn't even have brought that up because that's so nitpicky. And even like Winter Soldier does that, and that's one of my favorite movies ever. So it's like it's just me nitpicking, but I thought it was worth pointing out.
Yeah. I do need to share this, my favorite bit of trivia from the movie, because I already said probably the most like insightful bit of trivia was that bit about Sidewinder all being reshoots, because that just changes the way you think about the movie. But my favorite bit of trivia, just from a humorous perspective, is that the showrunner, I think it was the showrunner of Falcon and Winter Soldier, confirmed that there was plans or is plans for Sam to develop a power to communicate with birds, like in the comics.
No.
And I thought,
Let's not do that.
come on, you cowards, give us Sam talking to birds.
Or, yeah,
do
like,
it. And you know
If
what?
you're gonna do it, just do it.
I just laughed, and I thought, okay, it's actually the dumbest thing I've ever heard. But what would they do? What would the birds say? What do birds sound like? Are birds as dumb as I expect? That would be hilarious if he could talk to birds, and all they were like,
And they're just losers.
worms.
Yeah.
Like
Okay, bird, I need you to go into his lair, and then the bird just like flies off.
Yeah.
Like, I ain't doing that.
right into glass.
Yeah, it'd be so funny.
That would be epic if he could talk to birds,
Oh my
and they were the most
gosh.
useless. Like, it's the most useless skill
That would be so
that
funny.
anybody ever had, because birds are dumb.
Yeah, birds are dumb and useless.
So
That would be incredible.
yeah, I heard that, and I thought that is such a great bit of dumb trivia.
Come on, Marvel, do it. Let him talk to birds.
I can't believe y'all didn't dive into that one. On
Right,
this one.
right.
I don't have super serum, but I can talk to birds.
Exactly. Like this Robin over here is gonna. So I just want to say real quickly too. I did appreciate in this movie too, like that he kind of grappled with like, man, maybe I should have just taken the serum.
Yeah.
Again, I'm not saying it's Oscar-winning writing, but I like it when they kind of address the elephant in the room. And I thought that stuff, and I think that's where like Anthony Mackie, where you're like, this dude's a good actor. Like when he's kind of having those, like him and Bucky have that conversation, and then it pays off, later in the movie with a joke where he's like, Bucky's full of crap. I should have just taken the serum.
Yeah,
like
and he's fighting the Red Hulk.
when he's getting the crap beat out of him by Red Hulk,
Yeah.
and it's like that, and that I guess I like that stuff because that feels like this is the MCU I kind of fell in love with.
Yeah.
Like this writing that's just a little smarter than it needs to be, and just funny and self-aware and stuff like that. So those are all the things I did appreciate about this movie.
Yeah. Do you feel like this movie has in any way changed your level of expectations for Thunderbolts?
No, I don't think this movie didn't really affect how I feel about Thunderbolts. I'm like you, the Thunderbolts trailer kind of won me over. And they did one at the Super Bowl where they were playing like some 80s song, and I was like, okay, this seems fun. Like, this movie didn't really affect how I feel about Thunderbolts one way or another. And again, like I'm not trying to dodge your question, but part of me I'm trying to just kind of reserve my judgment to see how these three movies, how they feel as a piece of the puzzle for the MCU overall. Mm-hmm. But I am excited for Thunderbolts. I'm looking forward to it. And, that going into Fantastic Four. And then, like I said, just a year out from Robert Downey Jr. returning to this world, and, whatever you think about that or don't think about it, like at least it's something intriguing. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. I'm not going to sit there and be like, this movie has restored my faith in the MCU. But I would say, like, after this, like, okay, I thought this was a good movie, and it didn't just feel like they should have never made this. So, like, I think it's given me an optimism that I haven't had. I certainly didn't have this optimism after leaving the Marvels, which I don't think was as bad as people say, but you just left it going, well, that was a thing that existed.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought this was a little bit more than that.
I think it's given me a slight little bump in my MCU confidence because I'll be honest, I was not really looking forward to this movie.
Right.
I didn't really expect I was going to like this movie.
Yeah.
And then I like I said, middle of the pack, which is pretty solid.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it.
It's like we said, every time we podcast, we can't be like, this is one of the best movies of all time.
Yeah.
Some movies are just good and enjoyable. And I thought this was.
Yeah. It's probably the perfect place for us to wrap up, but I didn't bring this up, and we should have when we're talking through everything with spoilers. I thought the end credits scene left a little something to be desired. It was just a little kind of like generic nothing.
It kind of was, but again, and I don't want to be repetitive, it reminded me of older MCU where it lets you know that like there's more to come, but it wasn't like, I think one thing that they kind of got lost in the weeds with is they were almost getting like so like catering to like the hardest of the hardcore nerds where it's like, unless you are just, your nose is in these comics all the time, you don't even know what they're talking about. Yeah. And this was just kind of like a vague.
Well, and I think that was probably part of their goals. They wanted people to leave and go like, what was that? I need to Google that. I need to research who that person was and how many times did they introduce a character in post-credit scenes that then we never saw again because... And
that's the thing, too. I'd rather them just scale it back and do kind of something underwhelming than be like, oh, here's Blade. And then it's like, oh, the Blade movie's been delayed 6 years.
Yeah. But... So I get what you're saying there. It was just so generic of like...
It was.
Do you think that that's it? There's not more coming? And it's like, no, nobody's thinking that probably.
Yeah, we all know
that's all they keep talking about is how these things are sure to keep happening.
That's a fair point, too.
Like, literally, that was like the president's whole like inauguration speech was how more of this
the world is
likely
changed.
to come.
You're right. And I think probably part of the problem, too, is much like everything, I just don't have that expectation like I did in the first phase or whatever they call them.
I was honestly hoping that, much like the Marvel logo at the beginning, they were just not going to do a post-credit scene and say, you know what, we're just done with those. We don't need them anymore. It wouldn't hurt my feelings
at all.
And
it wouldn't bother me at all.
So like the movie ended, and I actually had the thought of like, maybe they did. So as I tend to do with movies like this, where I think there might be a post-credit scene, I Google it real quick. Yeah. Do I need to sit around?
Yeah.
And it said there was a post-credit scene, so I was like, okay. So I sat there and waited for it.
You know what?
And then I was like, oh, I almost wish I hadn't.
I think that's a great take on your part. They can probably just do away with them. They do enough teases within their movies now that you're right. I agree with you 100%. You've won me over. They should just do away with them.
Yeah,
they did them for a really long time. It was a really cool thing. It was a thing that, would get people talking. It's probably run its course.
Yeah. All right, Andy. I have not looked these up. You're the guy I depend on for stuff like this. How has this movie done box office wise so far?
Really well. $100 million this weekend in the U.S. alone.
Wow.
I think another like 90 to 100 overseas. Okay. So it's off to a good start. And I will say, this sounds ridiculous to say, this movie only costs like $170 million. It's not, which is ridiculous, but like the MCU could go crazy. Like they try to keep it somewhat reasonable, so it doesn't have to make $900 million to even turn a profit.
Right.
And I don't think there's a lot of competition next weekend. I mean, the big release next weekend is The Monkey, which I don't think is going to pull away.
It's not going to be, it's not a $100 million movie.
And it's not going to pull. It's not going to. Those two movies aren't competing for audience. Yeah. So I think as long as this movie can have at least a decent holdover, 50% is oftentimes considered like, we dropped 50%. That's pretty good. If it can stay in that 55% range of drop, I think it'll be a good thing for it. So it's doing well.
Yeah. That's interesting. I mean, I was really curious to see what it would do.
Well, and I think they were smart they didn't try and drop this in the summer, because this isn't Iron Man. This isn't Avengers. This is Sam Wilson as Captain America. So I think to put it in February was a smart move.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I did look at the Rotten Tomatoes score. Critics have not been as
favorable.
favorable.
People are really not liking
50% from critics on Rotten Tomatoes. The Metacritic score on IMDb was like 47 or something like that.
See, that seems harsh to me.
But audiences have it at 80%.
Okay.
And so it's one of those movies where, like, even though the critics are being hard on
audiences
are tending to enjoy it. Obviously, the box office, as you're saying, is doing well.
It seems like it's doing well. Speaking of box office, can I bring something up off topic?
Absolutely.
So the movie Heart Eyes.
Okay.
Which I have seen, you have not.
That was the movie we were supposed to
podcast
do that
last week, and we got sick, and that's fine. So just a little box office nerdum for you, if I can nerd out for just a second. Like I said, a lot of times the goal for a studio is like a 50% drop would be pretty good. And that's probably usually what you get. Now, sometimes a big movie comes along and, they'll be like, oh, it only dropped 30%. Like, it's got a really good holdover. So Hard Eyes opened last weekend to $8 million. And it's it's like a $10 million budget. The box office for Hard Eyes this week increased 15%. It made more money in its second weekend than it did in its first weekend.
That actually doesn't surprise me too much because of this weekend being Valentine's Day. And as weird as it is to say, like, go see a horror movie on Valentine's Day, it is sort of a Valentine horror movie. And I could see couples going, like, we need to go see a movie. This movie, Hard Eyes.
That is just a huge win for Hard Eyes. It is very, very rare that a movie increases in its very rare. So that's a huge win for Hard Eyes.
Yeah.
And for the box office.
I don't know that movie studios always worry too much about things like Valentine's Day and if their movie makes sense for it. It is kind of a weird weekend for Captain America: Brave New World.
It is.
Let's release it on Valentine's Day because it's not a very coupley movie. It's very much a family movie, as we said.
Yeah.
I actually went to a 10 a.m. showing on Saturday. And my thought was, I bet you there's going to be a bunch of kids here because families will come to watch it early in the morning. And that really wasn't the case. There was a decent crowd in the theater for a 10 a.m. showing, especially. But, so
I just wanted to throw that out. Big win for the box office. Hard Eyes increased its box office.
My plan yesterday was to see that 10 a.m. Captain America. And then I was like, and then I'll watch Hard Eyes and maybe I'll even see a third movie. Yeah. And like I told you before we started taping, just being sick, I still don't have my energy, and I got done with one movie, and I was like, I just need to go home and lie down.
Hard Eyes is like an hour and 25 minutes long.
I know. Probably the bigger issue was just I had to wait like an hour to the next showing.
I get it.
And it was like,
I get it. So just as a horror fan, as someone who wants to see the box office succeed, that just thrilled me. And also, I'm just going to tell you, spoiler, Hard Eyes is a blast.
Okay.
It's a blast. It's ridiculous. I had so much fun with it.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to hopefully getting to see it sometime, but I gotta say, when basketball ends, my life opens up a lot.
Yeah.
A lot more time for movies. That's not happening for a few more weeks. This week is very busy. It's like tournament week. We got conference tournament Tuesday, Thursday. We're hosting a tournament of Midwest Christian schools on Friday and Saturday. So I'm actually already worried about like,
are we going to be able to see anything?
Our plan is to do The Monkey on our next podcast. Yeah. We're both looking forward to it.
Yeah.
It's Osgood Perkins follow-up to From Long Legs. And I'm like, yes, I absolutely want a podcast about that. But it might be one of those, like, I don't know, maybe I go see it on Sunday afternoon and come back and we immediately pod about it.
We've done that before.
Yeah.
We did that somewhat recently with something. You saw something and it just came.
Wolfman, I think it was.
Wolfman, yeah.
So it might be one of those.
Yeah.
But
I know I got us way off topic, but I was just reading that before we started, and I was like, holy cow, you very rarely read about a movie increasing in its second week.
Right.
So congratulations to Hard Eyes.
Yeah, good. And I'm really excited to hear that it's a fun time because
It is ridiculous, but I had a blast.
yeah, maybe I'll see what I can do about getting there this week, and maybe next week we can add in some review of that along with our review of the monkey. It'll just be a horror
We've
movie.
done that before.
Yeah, double dose
Yeah.
going into it, and I'm excited for the monkey.
I am too. Yeah, I'm really excited.
Looks pretty wild.
It looks wild, and even if I hadn't seen anything about it, I would just be excited to see what Osgood Perkins can do following Longlegs.
Yeah.
It's always interesting to see, whether you like Longlegs or not. That is such a unique, just different movie. So it's like, you just like, man, I just want to see more of this guy and see what he's all about.
Yeah.
Yeah. And this, like we talked about when we did Longlegs, I haven't seen his other movies.
I haven't either.
So I've seen Longlegs, and now I'll see the monkey.
Yeah. So this is gonna be
My second.
very telling. Yeah. Was it a one? Did he have one story for me to really enjoy, or is this guy?
Is this like I've said? I said
of
when
our
we
guys.
did our anticipate. Like, I'm always happy to add like a new guy. Like, can't wait to see this guy's movies. So
Right.
I'm really rooting for it.
Yeah.
And then also next weekend I get to see Goodfellas in the theater, which is fulfilling one of my dreams to see Goodfellas in the theater.
That's what an exciting time.
I'm so excited.
Yeah. That would be a fun thing to do. I'm going to go and tell you that probably won't happen for me just because, again, I'm having a hard enough time squeezing in
Fair enough.
the ones we need to. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe something will happen and I'll work it out. So yeah. In the meantime, I just want to close this podcast by saying, like, I feel like I love movies. I want MCU to be good, and I feel like we're in a little better spot today than I felt like we were before.
I do too. And it's like, look, whether I think they should have continued or not, they are.
Yeah.
So it's like, even if I don't think it's a great idea, I can't stop it. So I at least want to be able to enjoy the movies that are coming out.
And we knew the only thing that will ever stop it is for them to start being financial failures. And as you said, it already looks like
This is going to
be
be
a success.
And look, I keep saying like they're never going to reach those heights again. Prove me wrong.
Yeah.
I'm happy to be proven wrong. I hope they do. I hope if some Avengers movie comes out that's like, oh my gosh, they did it. Like, I'm not rooting against the MCU.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for joining us
to be back.
this week. And hopefully
Next week we'll be here talking about something.
Yeah, hopefully we'll keep rolling with consecutive weeks of episodes for a long time,
I hope
and
so.
it'll be a long time before we have a gap again like that. But also thank you everyone for not giving us too much grief for missing. We're assuming that's not because we have such a lack of audience that nobody noticed.
No one noticed. You guys weren't here last
But
week.
everyone was just like, oh, just a much needed break for those guys because they've been working so hard.
Those guys are just killing it.
Yeah.
I'm glad they're
week
resting.
after week they're there. They deserve
You
a week
can't
off.
be at your best week after week and not take a break. That's what people were
Yeah,
thinking.
exactly.
For sure.
All right.
See you next week.
Yeah, see you guys next week.